All praise is due to Allah. May Allah's peace and blessings be on His last Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and on all those who follow the path of righteousness until the last day. We're now going into the last of the topics of tafsir, and this topic addresses the Quran itself in terms of its unique characteristics, the essential miracle of the Quran, and its mode of presentation. The term Quran means reading. It is a verbal noun. It means the same as qira'ah. This is another verbal noun from the same verb qara'a, which means to read or to recite. And this is the name which Allah gave it, because it was a recited text. It was to be read and recited. Allah refers to, and the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ refers to, single verses of the Quran as being the Quran. Chapters may be also referred to as the Quran, as well as the whole text may be referred to as the Quran. So the term Quran does not in and of itself mean the whole text. It could mean a single verse. You recited a verse, somebody can say, he recited Quran. Right? I mean, a verse from the Quran. It can be referred to as he recited Quran. He recited a chapter, you'll still say he recited Quran. And he recited the whole Quran, he recited Quran. The general principle which the scholars of tafsir follow is that where the words of human beings exceed the words of Allah in a given text, it is no longer referred to as Quran. Even if the whole text of the Quran is there, like the books of tafsir, they do not refer to them as Quran. They contain the Quran or verses of the Quran, etc., but they are not referred to as Quran. As long as the words of human beings exceed the words of Allah from the Quran, that text is no longer classified as Quran. It's a general principle. Now, whether you have an English explanation along with the Arabic text, or you have an Arabic explanation along with the Arabic text, as long as the words of Allah are less, that document, that book is not considered to be Quran. And the other term which they use to refer to the book or the document which is called the Quran is the Mus'haf. When they use the term Mus'haf, it means the Quran as a whole. They will not use the term Mus'haf to refer to a single verse or a chapter. Chapter known as surah, and the verse known as ayah. Right? So the Mus'haf is the term which is commonly used to refer to the whole text of the Quran. Now, Allah has referred to the Quran by different names. He has referred to it as the Furqan, as in Surah Al-Furqan He said, "Blessed is he who revealed the Furqan to his slave in order that he may be a warner to all the worlds." And Allah refers to it as dhikr. I mentioned the other verses before. "Inna nahnu nazzalna dhikra wa inna lahu lahafidhun." Indeed, I have revealed for you the reminder, the dhikr being the reminder and or remembrance, and I will protect it. And I've already clarified in the previous lectures the distinction between the Quran, Hadith Qudsi, and Hadith Nabawi. These are the three sources of revelation. The Quran, Hadith Qudsi. Qudsi here could be translated as holy Hadith. Here we have a place for holy because it was referred to as such. And Hadith Nabawi, Nabawi meaning prophetic, you could call it prophetic hadiths. The Quran, the usual definition which is given of the Quran to distinguish it from the Hadith Qudsi and the Nabawi is that it is the words of Allah. Once you start with that, you've eliminated Hadith Nabawi. You're left with Hadith, the Quran and Hadith Qudsi, revealed in Arabic. Still, Qudsi and Nabawi, as Qudsi and Quran are addressed by that, in a rhythmical form that now eliminates the Qudsi, and you're now dealing with the Quran. To Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, whose recitation is used in acts of worship, that's the Quran alone. And even its smallest chapter is a miracle in and of itself. That is the Quran. So, it's the words of Allah in Arabic, rhythmic form, revealed to Muhammad ﷺ. Its recitation is used in acts of worship, and its smallest chapter is a miracle. 6 basic conditions mentioned in the definition of the Quran. Now, the Quran is revealed, as we mentioned earlier, for reading, contemplation, reflection, and action. This is what it was revealed for, and we spoke about that in terms of the understanding of the companions of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and their practice, how they treated the Quran, how Allah warned concerning the Quran that those who don't reflect on its meanings, their hearts are locked up. أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ أَمْ عَلَى قُلُوبٍ أَقْفَالُهَا. Will they not reflect on the meanings of the Quran, or are their hearts sealed up? So the idea and the concept of reflection on the meaning of the Quran is fundamental. This is telling us that it is incumbent on every Muslim to learn Arabic. If we are to understand the words of Allah, then we should learn Arabic. We should be involved in the process of learning Arabic. And that's how it was in the early generations when Islam spread from Arabia and it went into Egypt, North Africa, into Spain, Syria, Lebanon, to Sudan. These areas, many of these areas were not Arabic speaking areas. Egyptians were not Arabs. They had their own Coptic language. Sudanese had their own language. North Africans had the Berber language. Syrians, they spoke Aramaic and a variety of other dialects of Hebrew and Greek, and they learned Arabic. Iraq had tribes that were Arab tribes, because really the lines that are now on the map between Arabia and Iraq, of course, didn't exist. There are no lines there. Right? This was a continuous area. So the tribes of the north existed all the way up into Iraq. So there were Arabs there already. But Egypt, Sudan, Morocco, Algeria, all these places, Mauritania, that we know to be Arab states, their native language was not Arabic. But when Arabic came there, when the Islam took over rule there, and the administration was an Arabic administration, Islamic Arabic administration, and the population in dealing with that administration would learn bits and pieces of Arabic to be able to communicate, and over time they absorbed these words into their language gradually until the Arabic in their language became more than the non-Arabic, and eventually it just became Arabic. So we look at them today and we refer to them as Arabs. Now, of course, there are some who were from Arabia who did settle and marry amongst the people, so there is a strain of Arab ethnic blood, you could say, there. Same thing with Ethiopia, Somalia, and Sudan. But the mass of people who are Arabic speaking, really they were not of Arabic origin. And the earliest Arabs, of course, were from the south, from Yemen. This is really the origin of the Arabic peoples, from the area of Yemen. And as I said, when Islam spread, Arabic spread along with it. And it wasn't really until the time of the Ottomans, after the fall of Baghdad and the hand of the Mongols, and the rise of the Ottoman Empire, where Turkish nationalism raised its ugly head and sought to replace Arabic, the language of the administration throughout the realm became Turkish. So the administrators were known as Pasha and these kind of terms, which are all Turkish terms. Then Arabic started to be taught in Turkey and in other places to be able to enable someone to read the Quran for barakah. The idea, barakah meaning blessing. The idea of reading Quran for barakah began in that time. Prior to that, everybody knew you learn Quran, you learn Arabic, to read Quran, to understand it, practice it, etc. But from the time of the Ottoman Turks, with the strength of Turkish nationalism, the concept of reading Quran for the blessing became established and spread. So the hadith in which Prophet ﷺ said, which is found in a Tirmidhi, authentic, whoever reads a letter from Allah's book will get a good deed recorded for him or her, and each good deed is worth 10 times its value. And I'm not saying that Alif Lam Mim is a letter, but I'm saying that Alif is a letter, Lam is a letter, and Mim is a letter. This was taken literally. You read the Quranic text, you got blessing for it. This tradition has continued with the rise of European colonialism some hundreds of years later, 15th century, 16th century, when they started to dominate the Muslim world, and they stopped the process of transition of Muslim people's languages into Arabic and introduced the Latin script in its place. Then this idea also took root in the other countries. So places like Pakistan and India, the Arabic stopped at a certain stage and remained as what became known as Urdu, which is a mixture of Persian Sanskrit and Arabic, with Arabic playing a major and dominant role. Also Hausa language of West Africa is about 50 to 60% Arabic. The Swahili of East Africa in Kenya and Tanzania is about 60% Arabic. And these were all written in Arabic script. The Urdu continued to be written in Arabic script, but then Swahili and Hausa was transformed into Latin script by British colonizers. And as I said, the concept of reading the Quran for the barakah became firmly rooted. So the tradition in India and Pakistan, where children, as soon as they're able to read, they learn Quran, and as soon as they finish reading through the whole Quran, they have this little ceremony they call Khatm al-Quran. They make a little party for the kid, and they figure, okay, we've done our job. They've read the Quran. Of course, this is a bid'ah tradition which they developed, but it's in keeping with that ritualistic tradition which had developed of being able to read the complete text. So though the Quran today can truly be said to be the most widely read book in the world, the most often read book in the world, the reality is that much of that world doesn't understand what it says. Right? Because Arabs only make up about 20% of the Muslim Ummah. This is the sad state of affairs which Muslims find themselves in today. And we need to realize this and to be involved in concerted efforts to educate ourselves and our children and our families to the Arabic language. Not out of a desire to be an Arab, meaning out of a dissatisfaction of one's own background and one wants to change one's nationality, no. But because of the fact that the Quran, the word of Allah, is Arabic. So when we listen to the Quran today, we listen to the recitations of Abdul Basit and Abdul Samad and others, and we are moved. Actually, we're not moved by the Quran. We are moved by the singer. Quran has become, for many of us, music. We are touched by the musical quality of the Qari. And even in these places where people specialize in this, you find, as in Europe, the French and the others, they like to invite cultural acts from different parts of the third world. They will come to Paris and they will perform on stage for the entertainment of the Parisians. Some of these Qaris have gone to Paris and recited for the entertainment of the French and others. And you just have to listen to some of the recitations, where you hear the person reciting and he makes these dramatic, pauses, and you hear people in the background, Allah, 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 Allah. Allah yaftah alayk, this thing. It's just like a pop, the way people respond to the pop singers, That's what it has become, unfortunately. So for us to be able to truly be touched by the Quran, we must learn Arabic. Not just to be able to parrot the letters, but to understand what Allah is saying. The difference that it makes in Salah, to know what you are saying, is something that you cannot grasp until you learn what you're saying. So each Muslim owes it to himself or herself to learn enough Arabic to be able to understand what they're saying in their salah, because the reward for salah depends on the degree of consciousness that we have of that prayer, and to be able to taste the beauty of the Quran as it was revealed. This can only take place in Arabic. Now, when we look at the presentation of the Quran, this is a very important point for da'wah purposes. When we're giving the Quran to non-Muslims, and actually for a number of Muslims maybe who have either converted to Islam or woken up and began reading the Quran, they may find the Quran confusing. You know, I've heard many non-Muslims say that. I read the Quran, but it's confusing. You know, Orientalists, they will commonly say that. It's a confusing book. Because of the fact that the way in which the Quran presents its information, it doesn't seem to follow any kind of pattern. When a person picks up the Quran, having read books and has grown up reading books, where books usually tell you a story, characters are introduced in the first part, then a plot is developed, then a climax is reached, and then some kind of conclusion, the story ends. Now when you pick up the Quran, of course, it doesn't follow that pattern. And this is what causes a lot of people to find it confusing. They're expecting something like that, but it's not. Instead, what you find is the Quran presenting concepts of faith. The believers, the hypocrites, the disbelievers. Then it changes into speaking about paradise and hell. Then it talks about Adam and Eve. Then it goes into laws. Then it shifts into descriptions of creation, the heavens and the earth. Then it goes into talking about the people of old. And then it shifts back into Salah. And the topics are just coming randomly. They seem to be just coming without any discernible pattern. So for a person who is used to reading storybooks or manuals where things are presented in a systematic way, the Quran is found to be somewhat confusing. However, if we consider that the Quran is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talking to humankind, Allah is communicating to the reader directly. God is talking. If we consider it from this perspective, and we think, how do we talk? If we sit down and talk for a couple of hours, do we talk like storybooks? Do we talk like manuals? No, we don't. We may start talking about one topic, then something comes to our head, and what about so and so? We start talking about that. For a while, then something else comes up. We start talking about this and that and so on. And actually, if you now put that whole conversation together, it will seem as though you are talking about random topics, very similar to the pattern of the Quran. The fact that you know the person whom you're talking to, and you have certain things in common, this is what links all of that which appeared to be random to somebody who was not there, wasn't present. They just heard your taped conversation. They may not be able to link it all together because they're not familiar with, or they don't have that familiar foundation. So it will appear to them to be random talk also. So when we understand that the subject matter of the Quran is humankind, Human beings. This is the subject matter of the Quran. This is what Allah is talking about. Human beings. He's addressing human beings. So everything in the Quran is somehow related to human beings. Whatever Allah is talking about, it comes back to human beings. Either human beings in their relationship with Allah and things connected to it, or human beings in their relationship to other human beings, to themselves, or it's human beings in relationship to the world in which they live, the physical world. One way or another, the subject matter remains essentially human beings. And the main theme of the Quran is the message which all of the prophets were sent with. As Allah said, وَلَقَدْ بَعَثْنَا فِي كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ رَسُولًا. Allah said, I have sent to every nation a messenger. أَنْ يَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَاجْتَنِبُوا الطَّاغُوتِ, commanding the people to worship Allah and to avoid the worship of false gods. That is the essential message. Worshipping Allah alone, avoiding false gods, and submitting to Allah in our personal lives. Submission, Islam. That is the theme which links everything in the whole of the Quran. Now once a person understands that and they go back and read the Quran, then everything now falls into place. That's why it is important, if we do give the Quran to others, that we should make them aware of this difference, that this book you're about to read is a unique book. It's different from any other book that you've ever read. That's where you start from. Don't expect what you normally read. And you should understand it is God talking to you, and He is addressing your relationship, how that relationship should be with Himself, with yourself, with other human beings, and with the world in which you live. Now, the uniqueness of the Quran is not only in its mode of presentation. Its uniqueness lies in its inimitability. That is, it is not possible to imitate its form and style. It is a miracle in and of itself. Now, to understand the miracle of the Quran, one needs to understand, first, Prophet ﷺ had pointed out that all prophets were given something which would cause people to believe in them. Miracles were given to prophets to convince the people to whom they were sent that they were prophets of God. Because why would people submit, follow them? Anybody can pop up and say, I am a prophet. Prove it. That's the purpose of the miracles, to convince the people that they were prophets of God. So as Prophet ﷺ said, all prophets were given something which would cause people to believe in them. The thing which I was given is none other than a revelation, the Quran, which was revealed to me. So I hope that I will have the most followers of them on the day of judgment. Now, miracles, when we look at the miracles of the prophets, the miracle of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was not only the Quran. See, some people mistakenly think that his only miracle was the Quran. No. He had a number of other miracles. When he was in Mecca and the pagans challenged him, he told them to look at the moon. And when they looked at the moon, it split in front of their eyes. One half went down one side of the horizon, the other went to the other. The splitting of the moon. Now the story that you heard, that when Neil Armstrong went to the moon, that they discovered the crack where the moon was cracked in half, that's nonsense. It's not true. Nor did he hear the adhan whilst he was on the moon. This is not true either. I know. Unfortunately, we got all these stories going around amongst us, right? You know, when he went to visiting Cairo, he heard the same thing, and oh, that's what he heard, and he became Muslim. Not true. Neil Armstrong is a non-Muslim senator and remains as such. Okay? The moon split. We don't have to find the crack. It's not a requirement for us. We are informed by the Prophet ﷺ and his companions that this took place. This was among his miracles. Among them, on one occasion, when he was giving da'wah to a man who doubted his prophethood, he told him to look at a tree which was nearby. When he looked at the tree, he called the tree, and the tree came up to them. Okay? This was a miracle. That convinced the man. It was enough. Another occasion, when he was with his companions on the desert for one of the battles, they didn't have any water. They ran out of water. They needed to make wudu and to drink. He told them to bring bowls, and he put his hands in the bowls, and water started to come from between his fingers and fill the bowls. Everybody was able to make wudu. They drank. On another occasion, he and a couple of his companions passed by a woman's house, and she had a goat outside, and he asked her for some milk. And she mentioned to him, or pointed to him, that the goat was dry. Its udders were dry. It had no milk. So the Prophet ﷺ told her, bring the goat. And he rubbed his hands on the udder. It filled up with milk. They filled bowls of milk. They all drank. Gave her back a bowl of milk. And the udders remained full. And the woman said, from that time the goat gave milk until it died. Okay? It was a miracle. And there are others. I'm just mentioning some. Okay? Similarly, for Jesus, miracles were given. For Moses, miracles were given. For all the prophets, miracles were given to convince the people that they were prophets of Allah. And what you find in general is that the miracles that were given tended to be in the area in which the people either excelled, or elements of the society excelled, and it put them in a position of honor or admiration in the society as a whole. So Prophet Moses, for example, in Egypt, the people admired sorcery. The sorcerers were next to the kings. So the miracle which was given to Prophet Musa was something which appeared like magic, turning his staff into a snake. And when Prophet Musa entered into that competition with the magicians, because of course when he first showed the sign to Pharaoh, Pharaoh said, well, that's no big deal. We have many magicians who can do the same thing. You know? So Moses challenged them. Okay, let us have a contest and see who in fact is or has the real power. So of course Pharaoh was sure that his people could outdo Moses, so they made the arrangements. They did. They threw their staves on the ground. When they threw their staves on the ground, it became snakes. It appeared as snakes. Moses became afraid. Prophet Musa became afraid, and Allah had to tell him, La takhaf, don't fear, throw your stick. And of course when he threw his stick, the stick turned into a snake and ate up the others. Now, when Allah refers to the magic of those magicians, He refers to the fact that they mesmerize the eyes of the viewers. Meaning, it appeared in their eyes that these things had become snakes. But they were still ropes and sticks. Whereas the magicians, they knew what they had done. When Prophet Musa's staff became a snake and it ate up theirs, they knew that what he had to be from God. Because what they were doing was just creating illusions, right? You know, the eye can easily be deceived by things, by movements. It's limited, you know. As kids, we used to take a pen or a pencil, you know, and if you take it and you shake it like this, it looks wobbly, like it's rubbery. But no, it's not. It's stiff. Right? That's the illusion, right? Whereas they saw that Prophet Musa's stick became a snake. This is something they couldn't do. They were not changing the nature of things. They were only making things appear that way. So that's why they prostrated to the Lord of Musa immediately. They knew this man was a man of God. And similarly, when we look at Prophet Isa, he was sent to the Jews. And the Jews were noted for what? For medicine. That's their area of specialization. They're into the medical field from ancient times. Medicine is critical. All societies need it. And you go into America, for example, the Jews, 6 or 7 million of them, represent what population of the whole society? America is what, 250 million or something like this? What is 6 million out of 250 million? Who is the financial wizard here? Give us a percentage here. Point what? 0.2%. Or 2% or 0.2%? 2%, okay. Okay, 2%. They're 2% of the population of America. But if you look in the field of medicine, how many medical experts are among them? It's a big percentage. I mean, maybe someplace around 15% or something like that. It's up there. Far greater than their representation in the society. Because this is a critical area. They know to protect their own existence, they will go into these very sensitive areas in the society. So they go into medicine. Because everybody has to come under the knife sometime in their life. Right? So you have a president or whatever that is, you know, against us. Well, wait and see. We're waiting for you. You're going to get sick one of these days, right? So they specialize in this field. And even in the Muslim state, in the Umayyad, Abbasid, etc., the top medical experts were Jews. So even in the time of Prophet Isa, that's how it was. They're into medicine. They would heal broken legs. They would provide medicines to cure eye diseases. So when Prophet Isa was given miracles, it was given in areas similar to what they were into, but greater. He didn't cure or heal broken bones. He made people who were born lame walk. That is something they couldn't do. He didn't heal diseased eyes. He made people who were born blind see. And he didn't save people from death because of disease and, you know, he brought the dead back to life. This is the evidence. And this was the nature of the miracles, to convince the people. Of course, today, if somebody were to ask a Christian, ask a Jew, prove to us that Moses split the Red Sea, or he turned his stick into a snake, or ask a Christian, prove to us that Jesus brought the dead back to life, or he made the blind see, or he asked us as Muslims, because we believe these things, prove it. Prove that Muhammad ﷺ split the moon, or waters came from between his fingers. Can we prove this? Can we prove this? No, we can't prove this. We believe it. We believe it because Allah has said so in the Quran. We believe this book. The Quran is from Allah. Allah said this took place. We believe it. We cannot prove it. There's nothing we can pick up today and say, here is proof that it took place. We can't. I mean, Muslims in their desire to have something, this is where they made up this story about the people when they went on the moon, they found the split in the moon. You know? We're not required to prove this. Those miracles were for the people of their time. That's why we don't have to prove it. It was to convince the people of that time. We don't need the miracle to see the miracle of Jesus to believe he performed the miracle. No. But Muhammad ﷺ, because of the fact that he was not limited to his time, there were miracles which were for the people of his time, but his main miracle had to be not only for those people, but for human beings for all times. So his miracle was the Quran. The Quran, which was in the same language that the people spoke, a language which they loved and adored, a language which they wrote out their poems on gold and hung it on the Kaaba and worshipped it. They loved their prose and their poetry so much. So the Quran came in that language, a challenge to them. And Allah repeats that challenge in the Quran in 4 different places. Allah first said in Surah Al-Isra, which is a Meccan surah, say, even if all of humankind and the jinn gather together to produce something like this Quran, they will not be able to do so in spite of their cooperation with each other. This is the challenge. Then later on, Allah repeated the challenge in Surah Hud, again another Meccan chapter. Hud, the Prophet Hud, is among the stories of the people of old. Or if they say he invented it, say to them, bring 10 invented surahs like it. And you may call on whomsoever besides Allah that you are able to help you, if you are really truthful in what you say. If they do not answer your request for help, then know all of you that it was only revealed by Allah's knowledge. First, bring a Quran like it. Then bring only 10 chapters. If you can't bring the whole Quran, bring 10 chapters. Then Allah reduced it to a single chapter, saying in Surah Yunus, or if they say he has invented it, say to them, bring a single surah like it. And he repeats the same challenge again in Surah Al-Baqarah in Medina, saying, and if you are all in doubt about what we have revealed to our servant, bring a single surah like it. This is the challenge. Now, the Arabs were unable to do this. And we have to understand the nature of challenges. There are challenges which have to be met, and challenges which don't necessarily have to be met. For example, when Elijah Muhammad told his people, white Americans, white people are devils. And I challenge any white American to prove that he or she is not a devil. And of course, years went by and no white American got up to prove that he or she was a devil, wasn't a devil. So he said, see, they're devils. None of them proved that they weren't. Of course, this was a challenge which didn't have to be met. White people were people in power in America. Why do they have to prove? It's not necessary, right? Similarly, Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i faith, they have a holy book called Al-Kitab Al-Aqdas, the holiest of the books, written in ungrammatical Arabic filled with a whole bunch of grammar mistakes. And it states in there, if you don't believe that this is from Allah, then produce one letter, one word like it. Of course. This is nonsense. The words in the book, anybody can write a word like it. This is a challenge which obviously no Muslim needs to stand up to show this, so it stands. But it's a challenge which didn't have to be met. Whereas this challenge from the Quran to the Quraysh, was this challenge of that character, or was this a challenge which needed to be met? If you consider, because for us, one may wonder, why couldn't they produce a chapter like it? And some Orientalists have put this challenge to some Muslims on the internet. People wrote this question to me, asked me, how do you respond? Orientalists have come to some Muslims who are involved in trying to give some dawah here and there, and they said, okay, we are ready to meet the challenge. We'll produce a chapter like it. Who is going to judge whether we did or not? See? This is the challenge. Brothers sent this question to me, said, what do we do? What do we say? What if they produce something like it? What do we... Hey, Allah said that if all of humankind and the jinn got together to do it, they cannot. The smallest chapter in the Quran, Surah Al-Kawthar. Inna a'tainaka al-Kawthar. Fasalli li rabbika wanhar. Inna shani'aka huwal abtar. 3 lines. We have doubts. Why? Because of course we see Yusuf Ali's translation. It's nice English. He's put it in a nice way. It's more poetic than Marmaduke Pickthall or Noble Quran or whatever. But we know if a Wordsworth or a Shakespeare pops up and says, okay, let me write 3 lines and see if this is not better. These people were not native speakers of English. Though they learned a lot of English, no doubt a native poet from English, the English language, could write something more beautiful than the most beautiful translations that we have. I think nobody doubts that. So, this is why the challenge is in Arabic. It's not English. It is in Arabic. So now these people are saying, okay, we'll do it. Okay, are you ready? Yeah, we say, yeah, bring it. How are we going to judge? What we say is, the only people who can judge this are the experts. It's not up to you and me, because sure, you can write something and you say, hey, this is just like what you have. And on the surface we might hear it and say, it does sound like what we have. Right? But we are not experts. You understand? Somebody can write a line of poetry and say, this is from Shakespeare, and you've read some Shakespeare, you read this, hey, it sounds like Shakespeare. But now a person who is a Shakespeare expert, he said, nah, he heard 3, we're finished. Nah, that's not Shakespeare at all. He can tell right away. The style, he can find in it the weaknesses in the style and everything. Stuff you